With free agency less than a month away, it's a great time to start talking about what players are likely to hit the free agent market and what is the best case scenario for all of those players. Obviously, we want everybody to land in a better situation than what they were before that, and that's not going to happen with everybody. But today, my top 25 free agents on the offensive side of the ball and where they could land that would be the best case scenario for them would be great from a football standpoint and fantasy standpoint. Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Today's video, my top 25 free agents on the offensive side of the ball and the impact that they could make on fantasy football if they land in the best case scenario. So I'm going to talk about my top 25, what the best case scenario for them is, and give you just a quick snippet on each player. Like I said, I've got 25 to roll through and I don't want this video to be an hour long. So we're going to do some quick hitting information right now. At number 25, Isaiah Pacheco, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, likely moving on to a new destination, and you'll find out why in a couple of minutes because I'll be talking about the best fit for Kansas City as well. But for Isaiah Pacheco, we know he's a hard runner. We know that he is an absolute beast on the ground, and he lacks some things in his game that make him a true all-around running back. So let's put him potentially with the Arizona Cardinals to compete with Trey Benson and fill in for that missing piece that James Conner once brought. You saw them have just a carousel of running backs in 2025. In 2026, Trey Benson and Isaiah Pacheco could really benefit from having each other together on this team. Number 24, Jalen Nailor, wide receiver formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that he could be a really great fit in San Francisco. Jalen Nailor has been overshadowed by Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson since he entered the league, but Nailor has showed up in some bigger capacity for the Vikings when it was needed, and he's had some very solid games. San Francisco continues to make a big mistake by paying a lot of money to its wide receivers. Deebo Samuel didn't work out, Brandon Ayuk didn't work out, Juwan Jennings also a free agent now, and Ricky Pearsall had trouble staying healthy last year. Jalen Nailor isn't going to cost nearly as much as some of the other free agent wide receivers, but he could be a very welcome addition to a team that needs playmakers at that position. Number 23, David Njoku. I don't think he's going back to the Cleveland Browns. David Njoku seems destined to hit the free agent market because Cleveland has some decisions that they need to make with their player roster, and they're paying a ton of money to Deshaun Watson to potentially not even be their starting quarterback. David Njoku, the best place for him to land, in my opinion, is in Minnesota. TJ Hawkinson is a cut possibility for me for Minnesota to save some money, and they could probably sign David Njoku and pay him less than what they're paying TJ Hawkinson. Not only could you save a little bit of money there, but we know JJ McCarthy loves his tight ends, and bringing in David Njoku to help establish the tight end position for a little bit of a cheaper discount is exactly what Minnesota could need. Number 22, Brian Robinson, formerly of the Washington Commanders, was shipped to San Francisco last year, and he spent the entire year behind Christian McCaffrey, who ended up being healthy for the entire season. This year in free agency, Brian Robinson has an opportunity to land in a much better position, and my best case for him would be with the Houston Texans. I doubt they're going to keep Nick Chubb around, and Woody Marks showed last year that while he was pretty decent at times, he also had a lot of trouble staying healthy, leaving a majority of games last season early. Pairing Woody Marks and Brian Robinson together would give them a really solid 1-2 punch and wouldn't cost nearly that much considering Houston has some big time playmakers they're going to have to pay very soon. At number 21, Rachaad White. Doesn't sound like he's going to be headed back to Tampa Bay, and at the end of last season he even posted on Instagram that he didn't anticipate being back either. My best case scenario for Rachaad White would be finding his way to Pittsburgh to go along with Jaylen Warren. Kenneth Gainwell is also a free agent, and last year's usage from Kenneth Gainwell was more about Arthur Smith, and with a new coaching staff in place in Pittsburgh, you gotta wonder exactly how things will work out. For some reason, I don't feel like Kenneth Gainwell is probably on the way back to Pittsburgh, but if you pair Rachaad White, a very solid receiving threat out of the backfield, with Jaylen Warren, who showed showed that he could do exactly what you paid him to do, be a 1A, 1B type of running back last year. Those two combined in the backfield together would be fantastic. And adding another pass catching weapon for whoever is the quarterback in Pittsburgh is not that bad of an idea. And number 20, J.K. Dobbins saw a little bit of a resurgence last year with the Denver Broncos and was able to stay healthy until the end of the season. He was able to come back in the playoffs, but the hope is that J.K. Dobbins can find himself with more healthy seasons ahead. And he's not going to earn a ton of money in free agency, but I think returning to Denver is his best case scenario. Him and RJ Harvey together would be really good for this Denver offense. And utilizing J.K. Dobbins on the ground the way Denver did earlier in the year clearly worked for this team. So you're already familiar with him. He's not going to cost a lot of money. Why don't you bring J.K. Dobbins back and give him the same type of work that he saw early in 2025? In Headliner Nation, if you find with no football right now that you just are a little bit on the bored side, that you need a little energy, something to pick you up throughout the day, then I highly encourage you to join us over on Underdog. Yeah, we're not going to be putting any lineups for football right now, and we're not even drafting any best ball teams as of yet, but that's going to be coming up really soon. But Underdog offers tons of other sports that you can put lineups together for, draft best ball teams, find some great pick'ems, and have an off season that is a ton of fun and just something as a little bit of a side hobby to keep things interesting until football returns. And if you get signed up for a new account over on Underdog and use code word headliners when you do it, when you play your first $5 fantasy contest, you're going to get $75 and bonus contests as well. And like I said, with it being the off season, we're looking for something fun just to keep us engaged. And you can do that by playing along with us over on Underdog. In number 19, Aaron Rodgers. And best case scenario is he just goes back to Pittsburgh. He already knows Mike McCarthy well. He's probably going to be going back into some sort of an offense that he is familiar with. And he's familiar with this organization and the players as well. If he doesn't go back to Pittsburgh, he's going to retire. I doubt that he goes anywhere else at this point in time. But for Aaron Rodgers, if he really feels like he's got a little bit more left in the tank and wants to give it another shot, Pittsburgh is going to be the place to do it. In number 18, Rashid Shaheed, and Seattle traded for him from New Orleans at the trade deadline this past season. And while Shaheed didn't make that big of an impact in the passing game, he made a huge impact when it came to special teams. And sticking in Seattle will allow him to make some of those same impacts, as Seattle will still have Jay Harbaugh as their special teams coordinator, but he's also going to be a deep threat for Sam Darnold. Cooper Kupp's going to be another year older. You still have JSN, who's coming off of one of the better performances that we've seen from a wide receiver all time. And you need somebody to stretch the field for both of those guys. Rashid Shaheed is never going to be a guy with consistent fantasy production, but in that offense with Sam Darnold, he's going to have some big plays in some big games. He could end up being a great fit for best ball this year. In number 17, Rico Dowdle, and he signed a one-year deal with Carolina, and after Chuba Hubbard went down with an injury, he was one of the top backs in all of football, and he was a top 5 fantasy football for quite a while as well. He put together some great performances on an offense that struggled to put together great performances consistently. Do I think he goes back to Carolina? Probably not. The Panthers are paying Chuba Hubbard a decent penny. I doubt they're going to pay Rico Dowdle the same. But I would like to see him land in New Orleans. Pairing him with Alvin Kamara, who's clearly at the back end of his career, would be really good for this Saints offense. And given how good the Saints offense looked in the passing game at times with Tyler Shuck as a rookie last season, I expect that offense to be even better. And to have a running back like Rico Dowdle that can help offset what Alvin Kamara does in the passing game would really help push this offense forward and would help give Rico Dowdle some really solid fantasy value every single week. Even if his ceiling wouldn't be that high, he would be a red zone threat, and he would be a guy that could go for 70 or 80 yards on a weekly basis and be a flex option. In number 16, Isaiah Likely. The dude has one massive game every 10 games, and people get super excited about him, and then he just goes back to being fantasy irrelevant right after that. Likely has been caught behind Mark Andrews for a few years now, and with the ability to hit the free agent market, Likely could find himself in a much better scenario. I believe that Travis Kelce is probably still borderline wanting to retire or return for another year, but it wouldn't hurt for Isaiah Likely to land with the Kansas City Chiefs. Even if Travis Kelce were to return for some reason, Isaiah Likely could still be a really solid number 2 option that could even end up playing in the slot every once in a while as well. And without knowing anything about Rashee Rice and Marquise Brown being a free agent as well, that team needs pass catching options. And if for some reason that Travis Kelce decides that he's not going to return, then you're already set for Isaiah Likely to have a huge campaign as the new starting tight end in Kansas City. And number 15, Deebo Samuel. Washington probably is not going to pay what Deebo's going to want in free agency, so Tennessee should, because I think Tennessee needs playmakers, and they've got some guys that could end up being solid options, but they need somebody that can turn the game on its side at any point in time. And we know Deebo Samuel has that ability, whether it's utilizing him in the run game, the short passing game, deeper down the field. He can be utilized everywhere, and Tennessee needs somebody like that, a veteran for Cam Ward to work with. And Deebo Samuel could really help shape this offense into a more explosive unit in 2026. Number 14, Romeo Doubs. The Green Bay Packers have a plethora of wide receivers, none of which have showcased wide receiver 1 consistency, whether it be because of just performance or injuries. They don't have that. And Romeo Doubs has been an outlet for Jordan Love in the red zone and when he needed to go to somebody. But Romeo Doubs is not what the Green Bay Packers need. They need a wide receiver 1, a veteran presence on the outside that can help this younger team at the wide receiver position grow and get better. Romeo Doubs, for me, should go to Cleveland. And the reason I think he should end up in Cleveland is because Shedeur Sanders seems likely as the next starting quarterback there. Even though they still owe Deshaun Watson a ton of money, it seems like Todd Monken loves Shedeur Sanders and is going to give him every opportunity to win that starting job. Shedeur Sanders is best in the intermediate short part of the field, and he's going to need some help in the red zone, and that is exactly where Romeo Doubs could help out. Jerry Jeudy is way too inconsistent. You have a deep threat that can stretch the field in Cedric Tillman, so give Shedeur Sanders some targets over the middle of the field that can haul in those passes. At number 13, Dallas Goedert, or if you're feeling fancy, Dallas Goedert. He just never really seemed to reach his potential in Philadelphia. He had some solid seasons, he's had some great games, but he was beside A.J. Brown, beside Devontae Smith. They were running the ball more the last couple of years with Saquon Barkley and utilizing him in the passing game as well. And because of that, it felt like Dallas Goedert was just forgotten more times than not. A great place that he could land would be in Washington with Jaden Daniels after Zach Ertz went down with a nasty knee injury and likely will be done in 2026. He clearly will not be returning to Washington. And while Washington has Ben Sinnott, he's not going to be the type of red zone presence and consistent playmaker that Dallas Goedert could be. So if Washington decides to move on from Deebo Samuel and now really your best playmaker on the outside is Terry McLaurin, Dallas Goedert could end up having a ton of targets in 2026 in Washington. At number 12, Wan'Dale Robinson. I think staying in New York is his best case scenario. Malik Neighbors is on the way back from an injury, but there's no telling if he's going to be 100% to start the season. And outside of that, you could argue that, yeah, Theo Johnson has a chance to make an impact in New York, but he's not going to be the playmaker that Wan'Dale Robinson could. And Wan'Dale Robinson is familiar with Jackson Dart. New York needs a playmaker next to Malik Neighbors. And even though I do think they run the football more with John Harbaugh at the helm now, I believe that having a really solid second option, something it doesn't feel like he's had in Baltimore for a few years now, could end up being the missing piece that they needed then, and they're not going to overlook it this time. At number 11, Tyler Algier. We saw that he could absolutely be a solid running back during his time in Atlanta, but they ended up drafting Bijan Robinson, and Bijan Robinson clearly is one of the best running backs in all of football. So Tyler Algier never really got a shot. I think if he leaves Atlanta, his best case scenario would be landing in Washington. Washington's already come up a few times in this video, so you know that I'm going to be on board with getting Jaden Daniels weapons. And getting Tyler Algier to Washington, I think, could be great for that. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt was not bad at times last year, but he is not a number one running back. He is not a guy that's going to shoulder that type of workload. He is the guy that should come in and help offset a 1A type of running back, who I believe could be Tyler Algier. And for Washington, who may not want to spend a ton of money but needs an upgrade at the running back position, Tyler Algier could give you really solid production for a fraction of what a couple of these other running backs that we're going to talk about will cost. If you are a Tampa Bay fan, look the other direction. Mike Evans is headed to free agency, and I think the best case scenario for him is the Green Bay Packers. Seeing Mike Evans in a uniform outside of Tampa Bay would be one of the weirdest things ever in football. When you think about Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers, you think about Mike Evans and his historic start to his career with 1,000 receiving yards year after year after year. But Tampa Bay, they have other wide receivers. Chris Godwin, he came back and forth between injury last year, but you paid him last offseason. You have Emeka Egbuka. You have guys like Cade Otton at tight end. You have pass catchers. Even Jalen McMillan will be on his way back after losing a season last year to injury. So because of that, I don't know if you need, if you're Tampa Bay, to pay Mike Evans to stay, even if you would love to do it. So if you don't stay in Tampa Bay, what's the next best case scenario? Going to Green Bay, where yes, they have a lot of pass catchers, but all of their pass catchers are kind of all over the place. Christian Watson has not been able to stay healthy. Matthew Golden has the talent but looked terrible last season. And Jordan Love needs a veteran presence that he can trust play after play after play, something that he has not had. Romeo Doubs, if he leaves in free agency, then you could bring in Mike Evans. You could go ahead and put Mike Evans on the outside. Christian Watson and Matthew Golden, they could switch between going to the slot, going outside, 2 sets, 3 sets, whatever it may be. You could do a lot of different things with these wide receivers. And the best part about it, Mike Evans could help Christian Watson and Matthew Golden grow. And after 1 year in Green Bay where he would have a solid season, maybe he's off to retirement and these guys step up and now they're huge fantasy assets moving forward. And number 9, Jauan Jennings. And he's been a great depth piece for the San Francisco 49ers for the last couple of years. And he's never been the wide receiver there, but he has stepped up and been the wide receiver when there's been injuries or guys have missed time. This past season, Brandon Ayuk never ended up stepping on the field. Deebo Samuel had been traded away. Ricky Pearsall couldn't stay healthy this year. And Jauan Jennings put together a pretty solid season. Best case scenario for him, I would love him to go be the 1A or 1B with Zay Flowers in Baltimore to give Lamar Jackson another really solid option. It feels like Baltimore has been playing around with these guys that may or may not be it for a couple of years now, and giving Lamar Jackson a legitimate another threat at wide receiver, I think, is a big need for this team. You can put Rashad Bateman on the outside, you can put Jauan Jennings on the outside, and then Zay Flowers, you can move him around. Zay Flowers, I think, is a good wide receiver, but I don't think he's the alpha type wide receiver that is going to make his quarterback better just on his own. And I think Zay Flowers could be even better and even more productive coming out of the slot or having to face different cornerbacks and not always getting shadowed by the other team's cornerback one. Jauan Jennings in Baltimore would definitely get a solid amount of targets. At number 8, Kyle Pitts. And I think it would be best for Kyle Pitts to just land right back in Atlanta. New head coach Kevin Stefanski is a better offensive mind than Arthur Smith and is a change from Raheem Morris and his defensive mindset over the last couple of years. Kevin Stefanski, if he's going to get something out of a tight end, it's going to be Kyle Pitts. And I think he's going to be much better about putting Kyle Pitts in a position to win than what the previous coaching staffs have. David Njoku, along with Kevin Stefanski, saw some huge success over the last few years. And he finally kind of broke out of a shell that he had this huge athletic ability, but just had a ton of inconsistencies, and he was able to find some more consistency over the last couple of years. When it comes to Kyle Pitts, I think he has a great relationship with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is going to be the guy in Atlanta to at least begin 2026. If they release Kirk Cousins, they are signaling to everybody that 2026 is basically a redo year for them, not knowing when Michael Penix would come back, and I think that would be a huge mistake in Stefanski's first season. At number 7, Alec Pierce. He's been one of the best deep ball receivers in all of football the last couple of years, and it doesn't feel like anybody really talks about him. This is a guy that has led the league each of the last 2 seasons in yards per reception. He's a great deep ball playmaker, and even with guys like Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, he still seemed to make play after play. He was just never really utilized correctly in Indianapolis, it felt like, and because of the quarterback situation prior to Daniel Jones, there was a lot of inconsistencies as well. Alec Pierce in Buffalo would be huge because Josh Allen needs that. He needs a guy that can win down the field, that can stretch the field on a consistent basis and be a big playmaker for this team. They're missing a true number 1 wide receiver. And while Alec Pierce to me isn't a true number 1 wide receiver, he is a step in the right direction because it's going to open up a lot for Dalton Kincaid underneath. And of course, Khalil Shakir, who has kind of been the number 1 wide receiver in Buffalo the last couple of seasons. Keon Coleman clearly isn't working out. Joe Brady knows how to get the most out of his offense, and Alec Pierce could end up being a huge playmaker in 2026 with Josh Allen throwing him the football. In number 6, Travis Etienne, and while I believe that he could still end up somewhere else other than Jacksonville, I think it's best case for him and the Jags for him to go back to Jacksonville. He had a down year a couple of seasons ago after a breakout campaign before that, but this year with Liam Cohen at the helm, he seemed to kind of get back to that same play style that he had the 2 seasons prior to that. For me, Travis Etienne should stay in Jacksonville. I know they drafted Byshell Tootin, and I feel like they probably think that he could really help in that offense, but Travis Etienne is a guy that helps make this offense go. He is a big playmaker from the backfield, whether it be on the ground or in the passing game, and that helps open up a lot of things for the wide receivers. It's good for Trevor Lawrence to have really good running backs. In number 5, Javonte Williams, and that playmaking ability that we saw from him early in his career in Denver showed up in Dallas this past year, and I think the best case scenario for Javonte Williams this offseason is to re-sign in Dallas. Even if he thinks he's going to hit free agency and make more money elsewhere, I would love to see him stay in Dallas because we know exactly how he's going to be utilized. We know exactly what we're going to get from him, and we know that he's going to be the main running back there. They have some guys that are going to back him up, but nobody that's going to steal the starting job from him. Hopefully he continues to stay healthy. And maybe he did get a few too many carries last season, so maybe we could dial the carries back just a little bit. But if you get George Pickens back, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Jake Ferguson, and if you can just continue to tune that offensive line, Javonte Williams will be solid again. Before I move on to my top 4 players, I want to touch on franchise tags really quickly because some of the free agents that we've already talked about could be franchise tagged by their current teams, and they won't even hit free agency or have an opportunity to test the open market. And a couple of guys that we've already talked about that could be franchise candidates would be a guy like Kyle Pitts or maybe even Travis Etienne. But here in the top 4, we're also going to have a couple of guys to talk about that could be franchise tagged and may end up even being better options for the franchise tag. If you don't understand the franchise tag, that's okay. Essentially what it is, it allows a team to franchise tag a player and get 1 additional year of team control for a salary that is comparable to the top players at that position. So for instance, Daniel Jones is not listed in this top 25 free agents, and that's because of his Achilles injury from last year and really not knowing when he'll be back or how good he will be. If for some reason the Colts decided to franchise tag him for the 2026 season, it would cost them over $47 million. And this number is set prior to free agency. So all the numbers that you see on the screen right now are what players would be paid at that position if a team franchise tags them. So if Kyle Pitts were to get the franchise tag from the Atlanta Falcons, they would be paying him $16 million. If Travis Etienne got the franchise tag from the Jacksonville Jags, they'd be paying him $14 million. And in this scenario, I don't think the Colts are going to franchise tag Daniel Jones because I believe at number 4, Malik Willis, his best fit will be with the Indianapolis Colts. And that might seem crazy to you, but we saw what this offense can do with a quarterback like Daniel Jones last season. And Malik Willis is right there with Daniel Jones. I don't think Daniel Jones is far superior to what Malik Willis can offer you, and I don't think he's far superior to what we saw from Malik Willis the last couple of seasons when he's had to fill in for Jordan Love. This past year, filling in for Jordan Love at the end of the season, he was very solid, and this Green Bay team really didn't miss a beat on offense. Willis throws the ball well. He's way more accurate than he was when he came into the league, and obviously he is very good on the ground. Indianapolis needs an answer at the quarterback position. It's clear that Anthony Richardson is not going to be their guy. So I believe that they're probably going to look towards free agency, and they're going to keep an eye on Malik Willis. And of all of the options that Malik Willis has, whether it's Indianapolis or Pittsburgh or Miami, Indianapolis would be his best case scenario. And number 3, Breece Hall. We know Breece Hall can be a game-changing player. He can do everything on the football field that you need a running back to, but unfortunately, he spent the last 4 years with the New York Jets. I hope the New York Jets are willing to move on from him, that they stay away from the franchise tag, that they don't even try to negotiate a new deal with him and let him walk, because if they do, his best case scenario is the Kansas City Chiefs. With Patrick Mahomes coming back from an ACL injury that also included other tears in his knee, he's not going to be 100% to start the season. And it could be a possibility that he misses several weeks of 2026 as well. And even if he does come back and he's not 100%, you are going to want a strong run game. And you just have not had that in Kansas City in a while. You tried to get it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire through the draft and it didn't work out. Isaiah Pacheco has been good off and on, but he's injured way too much. And he's not the type of all-around back that Breece Hall is. Spend some money, bring in Breece Hall, and you could see a huge season out of him. He would instantly become a top 5 running back. And number 2, Kenneth Walker. And this one is super interesting because all year long, we were frustrated with how the Seattle Seahawks were utilizing Kenneth Walker. Zach Charbonnet goes down with a knee injury, is likely going to miss a good portion of 2026, and all of a sudden Kenneth Walker becomes one of the top backs in the league, securing Super Bowl MVP, having 100 total yards or more in all of their playoff games, and looking like the type of guy that you can absolutely hand the ball to 20 to 25 times a game, every single game. He lacks some areas. He's not good in pass protection, and he's not particularly good in the backfield either, catching the football. But he can run the football with the best of them. He's super patient. He's got great vision. He makes guys miss, and he breaks tackles. At this point, best case scenario for Kenneth Walker is he just stays in Seattle and they just utilize him as the number 1 running back, giving him anywhere between 20 to 25 carries as many times as possible. And my number 1 free agent on the offensive side of the ball is George Pickens, and he was fantastic for Dallas this year. And I know it was hard for him to coexist with CeeDee Lamb sometimes when it comes to just fantasy production, because when you look at what George Pickens did, he was at his best when CeeDee Lamb was banged up. But even towards the end of the year, he was still having some big games here or there. And George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb can coexist. And now that they've had a year together and he's had a full year with Dak Prescott, I'm sure this offense will find a way to make sure him and Lamb both get the ball on a consistent basis. George Pickens going to another team at this point, I don't think is all that great. It's new chemistry that you have to develop with a quarterback. It's a new playbook that you have to learn. For George Pickens, if we're looking for offensive fantasy production right away in 2026, staying in Dallas seems like the best bet. And to me, it feels like Dallas at least will franchise tag him and keep him for another year. There you have it, Headliner Nation, my top 25 free agents for fantasy football purposes in 2026. If you're new here to the channel, subscribe, stick around, check out all of our off-season content. But if you're not new to the channel, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you leave a comment down below and let me know which one of these players you either disagree with the most or you agree with the most, and where you think they should land if you don't agree with the spot that I had them going to. Hype the video if you're able to, leave a comment, whatever it may be, just interact. It would be greatly appreciated. But more importantly, stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.